Indie and alternative rock beats have had a massive spike in interest recently. Producers like Rio Leva and John Luther have leaned towards this genre for a while now, and with artists like LACY and TAME IMPALA having a massive surge in the mainstream, it just kind of makes sense for producers to move to this style as well. But before we get into it, be sure to leave a like and a comment if you guys are messing with this type of content. And without further ado, let's get into it. So to start off, I just want to clarify that you guys do not need any guitar plugins or any drum plugins. I feel like a bunch of producers kind of stray away from these type of beats because they don't have an actual drum kit or an actual guitar in the studio. And even though that could help with some of the beats, it's not really a necessity when it comes to beats like this. So when I started with this beat, I didn't even have the idea of a indie rock beat in mind. So to start off, I had this respace and I laid down this pattern. And then for some variation, I had a second pattern that I made unique, and then I just took out these slides in the middle. So off rip, as you can see, I didn't even use an actual bass guitar for my bass. So just keep in mind that you can literally use anything for these beats. So moving on, I had this preset from THX, and it's from Ave McCree's Trippy Sounds Bank, and it's an ARP called Dark Twisted Fantasy. And then I stereo separated it completely, and I added on some supermassive for a reverb, and I did some EQs. And then moving on, another big thing for these types of beats, especially if you're going down that like ambient Steve Lacy, Tame Impala route, you want to use phrases in any way. Phrases and vocal phrases especially just create a completely different feel to the beat. I usually go through a bunch of kits to get a phrase that I really mess with, and it's as easy as just dragging it in and getting it on the same key as your beat and adding effects on. So for this beat, I had this vocal hit from Simon Savita's Capital Drum Kit 4, and then I also have this vocal riser from the same kit. So as you can hear, it's really subtle, but it just gives that right amount of ambience to the beat. And then for processing, I added on some reverb, delay from Comeback Kid. I also have this Antares plugin called Choir, and this basically just spreads out your vocal into 4, 8, 16, or 32 voices. And then you can play around with the pitch and the timing of the vocals. And this just kind of gives it more ambience and gives it that choir effect. And lastly, I added on some more reverb. So moving on to the last element of the melody, I added another instance of THX, and I'm pretty sure this is from the default banks. It's a ARP sequencer, and it's called I Saw, and this is how it sounds dry. So clearly it's a bit much, but I heard in the preset it has this filter that kind of comes in and out, and I just really like the vibe of it. So I just did a bit of processing. I added on vintage chorus, and then I added on this gross beat preset. After that, I half timed it, and then I added on 2 EQs as well, and this is how it sounds now. And this is a really easy trick to make any arpeggiator or any sequencer just work. I start off with just laying down a chord progression in the key, and then I do a bit of processing, but mainly I half time the arpeggiator. And more times than not, I can just use this sound to kind of tuck in the background and just fill out the rest of the melody. And moving on to the drums, I can't exactly remember what kit I got these drums from, but you guys have more than enough resources to find out. Reddit will always be the best place for this. You can just type in indie rock drum kit and a bunch of them will pop up. So starting off, I layered these 2 snares. And another cheat code for these beats is adding swing to your drums. It just creates the idea of an actual drummer playing the beat, and it just humanizes the bounce all around. And an easy way to do this is by going into your sounds menu and then going to this wrench icon, and in the middle under the time section you'll see a little shift knob. It's usually on 0, and I usually just bump it up a quarter of half the way, or I just do the full half, depends on what swing I want. And when I make these types of beats, I literally do this on all my drums, because more times than not, if one of your instruments are shifted and the rest aren't, it might mess around around with the bounce. So I usually just copy the shift knob's value and then I just paste it into the rest of the drum sounds. So next up I have the hi-hats, and I started with this basic pattern, and as you can see I messed around a lot with the velocity, and I really do encourage you guys to take your time with your hi-hats regardless of what beat you make. Hats are one of the main elements of your bounce and it can really make or break your beat. And then with those hats I also added on this perk loop. Adding a perk loop on and just taking out some of the lows and highs can really help with filling out your drum groove, and I always add a bit of stereo separation to my perk loops as well. Moving on, we have these two off hats as well. Another big tip for these types of beats are drum fills. When you're making these like indie alternative rock beats, you want to get your drums as realistic as possible, and adding some swings on your hats and snares can help, but adding organic drum fills that are like a bit off time will help out with your bounce a lot. And then for the intro, I just did a radio EQ effect and I just let it sweep down before the drums come in. And that is it for the beat. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something new. Hopefully this can be a sign to kind of get you guys out of just making the same type of beats over and over again. And making an alternative or like indie rock beat is kind of a complete 180 on the style of beats that we are used to making. So I just feel like this genre is a great stepping stone into getting out of your comfort zone. But thanks again for watching. Leave a like and a comment if you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.